So, do you think this new partnership is it a turning point for A.J. Foyt Racing into really a Penske Junior team? And how good is it for the future of the Foyt team itself?
Josh, I'll say gotta tip my hat to Larry Foyt and what he's been able to do to pull this off. I know A.J. Foyt Racing's been trying. I know we're going to get into this more in just a little bit, but I know that Larry Foyt, he's sick and tired of running at the back of the IndyCar grids, and he wants to get out there and make this team more competitive and take A.J. Foyt Racing back to his glory days. Basically, have more days like Santino Ferrucci had during the month of May, especially in the Indianapolis 500, getting on the podium there. Yeah, it really seems like the A.J. Foyt Racing might become the quote unquote Penske Junior team, and. And I also believe it's certainly a great starting spot for all their younger engineers who may not get that experience elsewhere, that may move on to other teams if they're not able to get a spot with Team Penske and putting them at Foyt. That's a great starting spot for them. Also, their young drivers as well. Now, Miles Rose having a really good season in USF Pro 2000, en route to potentially a championship at the end of the season. You get that scholarship money, could see Miles Rowe in Indy next in 2024, and maybe spend a year or two there before he's ready to go up to the IndyCar series. And with Team Penske been in the situation to place their drivers here, that could be a great place for Miles Rowe or any other their development drivers to be. And this also secures the future of A.J. Foyt Racing, showing that they're going to stay around for the foreseeable future. I know the last few seasons, there have been some concerns like, how is this team going to survive into the future? And right now, it seems like Larry Foyt and Roger Penske have developed a concrete plan to make sure that's all possible.
I absolutely agree with you, Kobe, and I think this is a fantastic move for A.J. Foyt Enterprises. However, I think A.J. would heavily disagree if you think they're approaching this like an AlphaTauri Red Bull approach to how this team is going to be ran over the next couple of years. I think it's just a reality check. Their last time they were genuinely competitive outside of the 500 was 2014 with Takuma Sato at Long Beach. These guys know that they're fast, especially on ovals, and I think they're still trying to put the rest of the pieces together to be fully viable for the rest of the season. And I see nothing wrong with this in the way that they're approaching this. Meyer Shank Racing, fantastic example of approaching this and building your team up through a technical reliance. 1 year on debut with Andretti Autosport, only running the 500. After that, did, I believe, 2 years in technical alliance with what was then Aero Schmidt Peterson, what's McLaren now.
Yeah.
And now they're competing for 500s, not quite yet fighting for wins, but always in the fight for top 10s and top 5s. And I don't think they would be in a position to run a full season yet if it wasn't for those building blocks. So I think this is absolutely a rebuild opportunity, and I only see this as benefiting them long-term in the future. From behind the Mac, don't give Santino Ferrucci a top-tier car at Indianapolis. He can go win multiple 500s with a Penske-type car. You can take that a lot of ways, BTM, and as a behind the mic, I'll be very, very neutral with this, but I will say you're not wrong with what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's Scuderia Roger Foyt. Potentially this come together, isn't it, as maybe people are bringing it up. But you're right, Jackson, about MSR. They've got that alliance going with Andretti at the minute. Their drivers, although, as we've reported on over the last couple of weeks and will again later on, been a revolving door down there, unfortunately, at the end of the season. But they've been sitting in on the Andretti technical and chats after, debriefs after sessions and stuff. Santino and Ben, if it starts at Gateway this weekend, which we are sounding like it is going to, they're going to be able to sit in with the man of the moment on ovals, Joseph Newgarden. Scott McLaughlin's come very close over the last few years, and Will Power's Will Power. He can win when he wants. Their eyes are going to be opened, aren't they, this weekend? Oh my goodness, look what these guys are doing. Why didn't we think of that kind of deal? And as Matthew rightly points out, Santino has got a great run going at Indianapolis. So when we get back there in May, maybe they can stride forward if he's still with the team, which we expect him to be. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go forward. Will this immediately vault them couple of rows up the grid in the pecking order over these next few races to end out the season, and how will they kick off next season. It's going to be really interesting to see how this works out. But no negatives from me. But Foyt Penske coming together is just a cool story.
It really is, isn't it? Just completely unbelievable in my books that they've actually working together. It's quite the team up as well. It's like Batman teaming up with Superman, in my opinion. But 3 races to go into the end of the season as well with those team up, 3 weeks running as well. And don't forget, we'll be on site at Portland next weekend and on site this weekend, because earlier on, our own Alex Andersen sat down with Benjamin Pedersen and asked him about the challenges of being a small team in the IndyCar paddock.
And sticking with the topic of your team, A.J. Foyt Racing, how does a smaller team like your team kind of view success differently from the top teams?
It's tricky. I think the best way is that's always a ever-changing target. It's some weekends like the Indy 500 where we have a lot of pace, then to be outside of at the front, that's not a win for us. But if we've been struggling and we manage to get a top 15 in a weekend, then that's a win. So it's an ever-changing target for us. We unfortunately aren't capable right now of rolling off the truck with cars that are at the front all the time, like some other teams. So we're doing our best, and that target's always changing. But we're trying to make it more consistent.
Now, in the last several years, Larry Foyt's made it his mission to make A.J. Foyt Racing a more competitive organization, and finally struck a deal that could eventually take the Foyt name back into its glory days. One of his biggest signings was bringing in highly respected engineer Michael Cannon to oversee the Foyt engineering department. The biggest highlight of the 2023 season for the team has been its performance during the month of May, as Matt touched on earlier on. Both Foyt cars made the Fast 12, and Ferrucci made it to the Firestone Fast 6, who ended up starting on the inside of Row 2 for the Indianapolis 500. He finished 3rd in the race. While the new partnership sounds good on paper, we won't see the full impact of the Penske-Foyt tie-up in the short term, as both organizations continue planning their futures together. Now, according to Puett, he's heard from his sources that the new alliance between Penske and Foyt is already attracting a number of quality drivers who want to join this program in the future. Beforehand, Foyt might have been one of the least attractive seats on the grid. When you throw in Penske into the equation, everything has changed in a heartbeat. Now, in the coming years, will the expectations for A.J. Foyt Racing change, going from trying to not be a back marker to coming into contention for the top 10s, podiums, and potentially even race wins?
God, it's just like, Josh, it's very similar to what we were talking about a couple weeks back with Alpine and kind of how they set this game plan over time. And I feel like there's probably a little bit of pressure here if that doesn't happen. But with that being said, Roger Penske is not an individual who opens up doors for technical alliances very often. This is the first time in my memory that I've seen a technical alliance between Team Penske and another team. And I believe that I don't think Penske wouldn't do this if he didn't believe AJ and his crew weren't able to lift themselves up and to have some sort of sense of mutual benefit for both. So you look at the willingness that Foyt has to win right now, and the crew, both in the cars and working on the cars, that they have right now. And I absolutely think we can expect way, way more top 10s in the near future. Even Team Penske, however, has been struggling for wins. Everyone's been struggling for wins this year if your name's not Alex Palou. But I think give it maybe 3 years in my mind for them to be fighting for wins, if possible.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's not going to be an instant thing, is it? We're not going to see them up the front at Gateway or Portland or Laguna, and then they've got a winter under them. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in terms of personnel. You know, Penske's a huge name. People want to go and work for the captain and that organisation, and if they've now got another place for them to blood some young talent, so to speak, within the IndyCar paddock on race weekends, week in and week out, then that can only be a positive for Penske and for the Foyt team itself. And that goes in terms of engineers and people behind the scenes, as well as drivers as well. So, as Josh, you mentioned a couple of times before, there's some good young kids coming up through the ladder, the Road to Indy ladder, that we need to be keeping our eyes on, really, and seeing where they shake out in this, as we're going to get onto shortly. If this silly season's something silly, then it's going to get really, really silly in a couple of years' time. But yeah, nothing but, as we've said before, nothing but positives for all sides concerned. I think this is going to be an excellent staple for everybody moving forward.
Yeah, this definitely seems like a big win for both sides involved, Team Penske and A.J. Foyt Racing. And obviously the expectations for A.J. Foyt Racing are going to grow over the next coming years. And I agree with what Jackson said. I don't think this is going to happen overnight. It's going to take time before and if A.J. Foyt Racing can get to the level where they're more competitive, they're finishing the top 10 more often, fighting for podiums and even race wins. It may take several years' time before they're able to fight for race wins. But like you were saying about the Alpine stuff, there's no need for A.J. Foyt Racing to set like a plan, be like, within the next 3 to 4 years, we need to win a race or something like that. I think what they need to do is just focus on getting this program set up, continue building their relationship with Team Penske, make sure they have all the people in the right places, and go out there and execute. And I really think that this is going to be a wonderful thing for A.J. Foyt Racing, and looking forward to seeing what comes of this partnership in the future.